episode of Building Rapport is brought to you by GWT2 Energy Consulting Services. For more information about them, make sure you check them out at gwt2energy.com.
Coach, is there any one position that has, or which position has the largest hill to climb in terms of getting physically ready to play college at the D1 level?
Man, you guys did your homework. I would have to say it would have to be a lineman type position, O-line or D-line, but probably more so the O-line, just from a conditioning standpoint. Because in high school, depending on where the person is playing, if it was very much a run-oriented type offense, generally the guys that you get coming in are going to be big, they're going to be strong. But in terms of the tempo of a college game, they're not going to be quite ready for that. So I'd say, overall, I think every kid is going to struggle no matter what position they play coming in initially, no matter how good they are. It's going to be different. And that's, again, since I've been on the high school level, I've tried to bring a collegiate mentality to it. When I took my first high school job after leaving Auburn and before Rice, I went to Jesuit preparatory all-boys school in Houston. And I told the athletes in one of my first meetings, I said, well, this school is a preparatory school for college. I said, now you're going to go through a preparatory program for college as well, athletically, in what we do in strength conditioning. But I think overall, to answer your question, I think it's got to be offensive linemen. But again, sometimes you get those guys coming in that they kind of have more, they're an offensive lineman, but they got more of that college tight end look to them a little bit. And to me, that's always a good thing. I always wanted offensive linemen to come in somewhat undersized than I did to come in gargantuan, especially not so much height, but weight wise. Marcus McNeil, who played, great player for us, great player in the NFL. If I'm not wrong, I think Marcus, his whole time at Auburn, he weighed like 330 to 340 the whole time. But through his hard training, he just changed what that looked like. And he was 6'8". So, for him to be that heavy wasn't that big of a factor. But some of these guys that aren't quite that tall and they come in and they're, some of your better high school offensive linemen are those guys that are weighing 250 to 270, 280, not the guys that are well over 300 pounds. There's time to get to that, That's what I always believe.
All right, Coach. Want to hear from you. We talked to, again, some players, and they got some stories of some brutal workouts.
Now let me tell you something. That you've heard about fish stories, right? People going out fishing, that fish gets bigger. Some of those stories are fish stories now. They get bigger and bigger. Because I came back in 2014 when they did the 2004 reunion. I came back. I was coaching at Rice, and it worked out well. We had an open date, so Joey Caldwell, who was on that national championship team, he was a walk-on. Joey Caldwell had come to Rice to work for me, and he's now at Texas A&M Commerce, my alma mater. He's the strength coach there. Very proud of him. We road tripped it, man. We drove 10 hours to Auburn and came to that 2004 reunion in 2014. And that I think it was Friday night we had a dinner. Maybe it was Thursday night. It was Friday night. There was a big dinner up in the Letterman's Club. And some of the things those guys were saying, some of the stories that, Docs, I remember when we did this, and I was like, look, I got it on the computer. I can pull it up and send it to you. We did not do that. But some of them are pretty true. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
I want you to tell us one of a memory you have that sticks out in some of the workouts that you've done with the guys. Like, what was one of those workouts that you knew separated the men from the boys, and it was a tough one for the guys?
We, it might not have necessarily been with the 2004 team. I know that, you talk about different things that happen during the wintertime. And this was back, oh, this is a long time ago, because I distinctly remember Kendall Simmons being in this workout.
Okay.
So, you know, that was a long time ago. It was a bubble.
O-lineman, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Pittsburgh Steelers, Super Bowl champion. Works. I don't know if is he
He
at
is.
Auburn as an analyst
He
still?
still is. Yes.
He's one of my all-time favorite human beings. He and his wife. Oh my goodness. And they've raised a beautiful family. But at any rate, we had a bubble workout, and we always did the mat drills. Then we did agility drills, and then because the Mike, if you remember, that bubble was only with the end zone too, was only 35 yards
35
long.
yards.
And it was the width of a football field. So it was great for me because everything I need to do conditioning wise for football, we could do in that bubble. Whether we ran across the field, over and back, 110 yards, or over back, a full gas or 220 yards, or short sprint. So it was perfect for me. But what we did was after mat drills, after agility drills, then we would run 20-yard sprints, and you had to run perfect sprints. Everybody had to run through the line. And I always had to deal with the guys run 5 yards deep. And I tell them, it's 2 more steps. Run 5 yards deep, run through the line. And, you talk about things for players to get used to. It always happened with a new player. We'd have that first day of sprinting, and that guy was so used to getting just near the finish line, and boy, then he'd slow down, and I would lose my mind, And the older players, that was what they were great about. If they saw that happen, they were up the kid's butt too, So I didn't have to lose my mind quite as much. But that particular day, it was a rough workout. We had to run. We might run 2 perfect sprints. We might run 10. But that day, it was just one of those days, man. And I always took it was kind of a judgment call between me and Coach Tuberville when we felt like enough was enough. And I don't know how many, Joe Witt Jr., I think he was in that workout too. So that'll again tell you how long ago this was. I think that day we ran in excess of 50 20-yard sprints after all that. That was a pretty memorable one. But I will tell you there's been a lot of Caesar. I mean, just so many I can't, but the ones that were special were the ones where those guys busted their ass and knew walking off that field or walking into that weight room after they conditioned that they had done something really, really good that day. Those are the kind that I remember. Now I do remember my very first conditioning workout at Auburn ever with the team. Tubbs had just gotten hired. I come down, and Auburn had been through a lot in that transition, where the head coach had resigned during the season. There was an interim. It was just a rough year. I think they maybe won 4 games. Can't remember. But it was the 98 season. So we had all these guys back. And back then, as I recall, walk-ons traditionally hadn't gone through all of off-season. They came out for spring ball, but they hadn't gone through off-season. Well, Tubbs said, no, if you're on this team, you're going through off-season. So this was before rules about the size of your roster. And I distinctly remember this number. We had 136 kids on that team back then. That's a lot. And we had so many that my workouts had to start at 5:30 in the morning. Okay. So the first workout we did, I thought, okay, I don't know where these guys have been through a lot. I don't know that they're in great condition. You can ask Cole Kubelik. You can ask Rob Pate. I mean, you can go back. You can ask Kendall Simmons. He was there. The first workout we did was we ran 3 full gassers. So a total of just shy of 700 yards of running. Okay, 3 full gassers. I gave them a bunch of time in between. Normally in between a full gasser, when we got to and this story will end, believe me. normally when rest time for full gasser was usually about a minute, maybe a minute 15. I purposely made that rest time real large because we were going to run the 3 full gassers, and then we were going up to the weight room. The weight room was upstairs at that time where Tigers Unlimited is now, or where Tigers Unlimited was when I left. We're going to go upstairs and just go through an orientation. I wanted to see how they could clean, how they could squat. So I thought, okay, we'll get a little taste of some conditioning, and then we'll go up for orientation. I knew, so you get in there and you got guys like Rob Pate, you got Heath Evans, you got some overachieving type guys. Well, they're coming in there and they're like, I'm fixing to show this guy that I can run, right? And we got guys finishing full gassers that are lineman type guys, and they're running what tight ends and linebackers would run in that first rep. I mean, they're killing it, right? Because all the coaches are standing around, the new coaching staff is standing around watching me conduct this workout. All right. And so then I announced the rest time, and truly in my mind, I'm thinking, well, this is like abundance of time. We go to run that second one, and boy, all of a sudden a bunch of guys are, hamstrings are cramping up, lower backs are cramping up, and then but we finish it. Then we run that third one, and every group, I think because of the numbers of kids we had that day, that third rep for every group was just a debacle. Okay. I mean, I had guys not being able to finish, guys walking across the line, falling out, trainers scrambling all over the place because guys are falling out. And I remember Tubbs came in later. He came in about midway through the second workout. He looked around and he said, because he didn't, I was the only one on the staff that was new. Everybody else came from Ole Miss. So Tubbs really didn't know me other than Mazzoni and Nall and all those guys that worked with me. And he looked at me and he said, Coach Yox, what the hell are you doing in here? And I said, Coach, we're not doing much because all we're doing is running 3 full gassers and that's it. And so each group barely made it through the orientation up in the weight room because so many guys were so blown out from just doing that work. We even had a kicker. I was standing there talking to the players and had a kicker throw up all over the back of one of the offensive linemen because he was standing behind the offensive lineman, threw up all over his back. I'm not going to mention any names on that. I do remember who it was, though.
Gotta be Philip Yost, right? It's gotta be Yost.
No, it wasn't Yost. That was way before Yost. No, and you know what? Philip Yost wouldn't have done that. No, that was way before Philip. Yeah, way before Philip. But anyway, so from that day, and I told the players later on that team, I mean, we had guys, and again, remember that walk-ons didn't do all that back then. They came out for spring ball and all that. They might have done some lifting and conditioning a little bit lower level with the strength coach, but they hadn't done all that. So we had my assistant at the time, Philip Lally. He's a longtime Alabama head coach, did a great job as my assistant. Philip, we were trying to remember names. We had the guys, we would tape their names to the wall with athletic tape, and they'd have to come in and put the tape on their chest so we know who they were. Well, anyway, we had guys walking out of the workout going, I'm out of here, man. I'm quitting. And Phil would go, hang on, hold on. I need to know your name first so he could check them off the list. So we had a ton of guys, and I'm not trying to brag. Okay. I'm just saying, we had a ton of guys quit that day. And then I told the players later on in a subsequent team meeting, I think the next day or whatever, I said, okay, yesterday you ran the equivalent of I was big on numbers. Okay. So they ran an equivalent of right at about 680 yards. I know it's kind of it sounds like a strange number, but that's what they ran. I said, you guys ran the equivalent of 680 yards from here on out. My whole time at Auburn, never in a conditioning emphasized workout will we ever run less than 600 yards. We will always run at least the equivalent of 3 full gassers, no matter how that adds up, whether we're running 20s or whatever the case may be. We're never running under 600 yards, ever again. And that's probably, Caesar, to answer your question, I know it's a long explanation. That's probably one of the most memorable ones that didn't go quite the way I wanted it to. The more memorable ones, though, were the ones where those guys finish a workout and, it drilled them. It drilled them, man. But they had that sense of accomplishment, and there were many times where I walked off the field going, damn, I put them through that one. And here they were getting ready to go to the weight room, and bam, hitting it again.
So I distinctly remember filming some of this during my time. And
so there's evidence.
There's evidence. There's video evidence. And I remember the bear would jump on your back during the third gasser, either at the end of the second gasser or on the way down.
Did you film that workout?
I not that one in particular, but like okay. I remember again, that was one of the ones, because when walk-ons would come to try out for the team, that was
we put them through conditioning. We had to. Yeah, so you're talking about our tryout days. Yeah,
yeah. They used to go through that, and when you were telling that story, I started remembering. I was like, wait, this is walk-ons to go out, and you would find out really quickly whether you thought you had what it took to get on the team after going through that. But so in that sense, I want to pivot a little bit to development. Recruiting has changed, Coach, and everybody has become disillusioned with stars and ratings and all this stuff. And during your time, what I remember is that we had a lot of guys who maybe weren't, 5-star guys or blue chip guys or whatever term you want to use.
Especially early on, yeah.
But you had guys like Jay Ratliff who developed into all pros during their time. And can you talk a little bit about how do you, as a strength and conditioning coach, help the coaches recognize a guy who maybe wasn't highly recruited, wasn't, at the top of everybody's recruiting list, but, is there something that you identify in the weight room that tells you, hey, this kid has something special, coach, right? And he may not be your number one recruit, but he's going to outwork everybody here. Do you have a story, or do you can tell us anything about that?
Well, you just hit it on the head. It's a matter of work ethic. If a player demonstrated to me early on or after some time that they weren't afraid of hard work, I knew generally that they were going to be worth a lot to us in terms of what they gave back to the program, whether it was playing on Saturday or getting the players prepared to play on Saturday, which is a very important ingredient as well. A lot of people, they see all these guys that play on Saturday. They don't look at the guys that help them prepare. I just mentioned Joey Caldwell, who worked for me at Rice University and was on the national championship team. He's a classic case of a guy that you just knew early on was going to work hard and get a lot of benefit in strength gains, size gains, speed gains from those workouts. So a lot of it didn't have to do with anything scientific wise. You just watch their body language and their work ethic and things like that. And you got to know when to push different buttons to get somebody going. Whether it's negative reinforcement or positive reinforcement, you got to use them both. And, again, too, I would often look at when a player would come in, just what they look like physically. Styles of clothes these days makes it hard to read what a player looks like, with what they're wearing many times, or coaching in a place like Minnesota. Kids were always bundled up, because it was so cold. It was hard to read what their body types looked at. A lot of times, I'd look at mom and dad. I mean, especially if mom and dad were younger in age, and a lot of times you want to look at mom and dad and see what they look like as an adult, because that'll give you a good indication of what you're going to see as the player goes through their time with you. So there's just a lot of different factors involved there. I know that sounds kind of strange, but it's true. A lot of times broadness of shoulders, okay, broadness of hips, even though there might be somewhat undersized, thickness of wrists, just things like that. I mean, I know it sounds really weird, but as a strength coach, I was always checking out just different body types, how a kid moved, and that's why camps are so important for kids to go to. I mean, I know there's, I don't know how it is with COVID now. I'm sure there weren't very many this past summer, but being able to see a kid actually play the game, whatever their game is extremely important. So what kind of athlete they are and how they can move. And but again, a lot of it comes down to up here too. It's I mean, I've seen a lot of kids that were gifted physically, but they just didn't have it, between the ears, as they say, to continue on with it. And it's not, as they say too, it's not for everybody. And that mental makeup is as important, if not more important, especially in collegiate athletics.
Coach Yoxall, in the vein of recruiting, still talking about how things have changed, a few years ago, we incorporated an early signing period where kids can sign middle of December, enroll early, and that's become sort of the norm. In fact, Auburn had a signing day in February and only signed like 6-7 kids.
Right.
They're signing earlier and earlier and getting on campus as soon as possible. A lot of them are. For the kids who are coming on in the summer, are there things that strength and conditioning coaches can give to these kids so that when they get to campus, they can hit the ground running with your actual program, getting acclimated to school?
Yeah, and that's a great question also, and I can answer that one. Going back to when I was still coaching in college. Okay, so my last year coaching at Rice was in 16, I believe, and so they didn't have that early signing period, hadn't come on yet, but kids could still enroll early. So what would go on back when I was still in college was, as soon as signing date happened, I would already have a manual ready. A lot of guys do DVDs. I'm sure guys have taken it even further with FaceTime and things like that. But I always had a manual ready that was ready to send out, or I'd email it, but I couldn't email it till we had that letter of intent. And what I always did was, I could give them a real specific program, specific exercises, things of that nature. But a lot of times kids wouldn't have access to that type of stuff. So what I always did was I always sent a very, lack of a better term, a very generic program to every player. The program was the same for every player, no matter what position they played, just to get them used to some of the core lifts, clean squats, front squats. And generally nowadays, in these high school programs, they are so well done and so comprehensive. I just spoke of the kids that I've coached in high school. My guys would get that stuff and they already knew how to do everything, right? I would send a very generic lifting program and conditioning program, because many of these athletes are multi-sport athletes. So I'd put a long letter in there and just say, hey, look, if you're running track, if you're playing basketball, don't worry about the conditioning part of this until you're done. But the lifting part, if you're not consistently lifting, you need to somehow find the time. I always left my email, my cell phone number with them. And that always gave me a good read. If I sent a workout to a kid and I didn't hear from them, see them, text with them until the day they got on campus that summer, that was a red flag to me. Okay. Sorry, but I mean, I'm going to be the guy you're going to see most of the time for the next 2, 3, or 4 years. So we need to open this line of communication. Now I would keep those lines open. I would text, I would send emails, things like that. And the letter that I always sent them was the emphasis on conditioning. If you don't know, I would always paraphrase things with, if you don't know how to clean and nobody can teach you how to power clean between now and when you get here, then wait till you get here and then we will teach you. But you know how to run, you know where you can run, make sure that gets done. And I would always put in there, and don't think that because you're playing, you're playing basketball or you're swimming or something like that. That's going to translate onto what we do. And the running program was there was no agility. It was just all straight ahead, the kind of yardage that would be expected from them. And, and I would put in that letter that we're going to know pretty quick if you're in shape when you get here. And I always just kind of left it at that. I never did a conditioning test. I used to do it. I think we did it might have done it early on at Auburn when the guys got there during the summer, but I quickly just came around to thinking, you know what, we need to water it down when they first get here and ease them, kind of get them acclimated. And my goal for the freshmen that came during the summer was just to simply get them ready for football practice in August, because it was feast or famine, as far as you'd get some kids that were very intrinsically motivated, and they'd come in and right away, even though I knew I could put them with the older guys. And then you'd get those other guys, man, that you just had to be really careful because they had dropped the ball and enjoyed that spring time of their senior year and hadn't gotten ready. A long time ago, you didn't see the freshmen until August. And that was always kind of quite a circus when you didn't, even though you'd send them a program, you didn't see them till August. So I'm a fan of them coming in during the summer. I think that's extremely important. And almost nowadays, you never have a kid that gets there in August. They at least get there in June, for the summer terms and things like that. And one thing I wanted to touch on, Mike, real quick, going way back to that story about that first conditioning session. I figured out real quick that from a weight room standpoint, the Auburn players that we had at that time, they were pretty well prepared. They were some strong dudes now. Cole Kubelik, Kendall Simmons, they were all really strong, but their conditioning needed a lot of work. So you talk about different phases that you take teams through. It's always different every year. And that winter of '99, when I got there, we had to emphasize conditioning more than anything. So the winter of '99, we ran Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and all we ran was full and half gassers. I gradually took it up, and then we only lifted on Tuesday and Thursday. We only lifted that winter 2 days a week, and we ran Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and all the running was all in the indoor until we got to mat drills, and it was full and half gassers, and we went from those 3 full gassers that first day to the last day before we did mat drills. We ran 12 full gassers in one workout.
Wow.
12 full gassers with we probably did about a minute to a minute and a half rest in between. But I just knew that this group had to get in condition before we could, I knew the weight room was okay for that time right then. And then it switched over once we got into our summer training. But yeah, you can ask some of those old dudes. I mean, the real old dudes, Heath Evans in that era. We did a lot of running that winter. But it's just every year you got to gauge where your team's at.
Listen, Coach, we really appreciate you joining us today to talk strength and conditioning. We have a thing we do on the War Rapport. Anytime I talk about strength and conditioning or development, everybody has to take a shot. So people get drunk a lot watching our show because we talk about development quite a bit.
Well, if I'd known that, I would have brought a beer with me while I was.
Can you talk to us a little bit about what you're doing now, now that you're not in strength and conditioning coaching? Are you thinking about possibly getting back into the game here pretty soon, or how is Coach Yox filling his time?
Well, right now, so my last coaching job we live in Waco, Texas, and I had taken a job at Midway High School, a tremendous program here in the state of Texas. You talk about how things have changed weight room wise from those 4 squat racks I had back at TCU in 1987. I came to this job with a weight room that had 44 squat racks in it and 44 platforms connected to their full indoor like they have at Auburn now at a high school. And then I had another weight room on campus that had 16 racks. So I had 60 racks in my program here at Midway High School. And things were going well, you know, and there weren't any college jobs that we, you know, when we left Auburn, you know, we had been away from Texas since 1992. We had been back and forth for visits, but my wife's from Tyler, Texas. I'm from Dallas, and we'd just been back to visit. And so, you know, we're leaving Auburn, a very emotional time, things of that nature. And basically the conversation is, well, what are we going to do? And I said, well, I know one thing, we're going home. We're going to Texas. And so we moved back to Texas and ended up at Strake Jesuit High School. And then shortly thereafter ended up at Rice. Things, we had to leave Rice. Things didn't work out there and took a job in San Antonio, a high school job. And then this job at Midway High School in Waco came up and took the job and just really, you know, 3 years into it, was really enjoying it, you know. And at one point, my wife and I had that conversation of, well, what do you think, you know? And I said, no, I'm enjoying myself. I think we're good, you know. I'm now 60. At that point, I'm 61 years old, and so you know, sometimes you got to watch. You know, the old saying, you got to watch what you ask for. Well, shortly thereafter, that conversation of me telling my wife, no, I think we're good, I got contacted by Daryl Johnston, played fullback for the Cowboys for many years, the early 90s.
The Moose.
Yeah, the Moose. I had been recommended to Daryl Johnson by Mike Wosick, his strength coach with the Cowboys and at Syracuse when he was at Syracuse, same person. And another strength coach, I mentioned him earlier, Mike Clark, who's with the Detroit Lions. I've been recommended to Daryl, who was director of player personnel for the Dallas XFL Renegade team, the spring league that started last year at this time. And man, you know, I looked at it, and that was the one level that I had never coached on before. And so, you know, after a lot of thought, a lot of prayers, I'm from Dallas. It just really fit. My wife, Nancy, and I've been married for 34 years, 35 this summer. How that's happened with her putting up with me, I don't understand. Anyway, 34 years, soon to be 35. You know, she stayed here, and she has a position here at Midway ISD. And I just went back to my mom's house where I grew up and stayed in the room where I stayed during the season. And the thought was, well, let's see how this goes. It's a startup league. You just never know. Let's see how it goes. Well, anyway, it was going great. I was enjoying it. It was a little bit of a shift for me now working with pro players. That's a whole different ball of wax, so to speak. But one I was adjusting to. The football was good. I don't know if y'all watched any games, but the football was good. Everything was going well, but just like everything else from a year ago, COVID happened. And first they postponed the season. And then Vince McMahon, the owner of the league, went into Chapter 11. And we all went home in March. And then come April, we were all terminated from our positions because the league went under. We filed Chapter 11. So anyway, nobody's beating down my door to coach. And I'm looking around. I actually started an LLC that I still have called Yoxall's Graybeard Training. I was going to start training people here at my house. I got a great weight room, as most strength coaches do. I got a great weight room in my garage, and I was just going to start training people at home. But it's funny what relationships are all about in this business. One of my former assistants from UCLA had started working for this company, Dynamic Fitness and Strength, out of Wisconsin, a fitness equipment company. And he called me up. He said, Yox, we don't have a direct Texas rep. I think you're the perfect guy for it. So I went up and saw their company, made sure it was legit. And, you know, I'm never going to put my name on something that isn't worth it. Saw how they did things, met the owners, interviewed. And so long story short, I'm the direct Texas rep for Dynamic Fitness and Strength out of Wisconsin. And we're not real well known here in the state. Most people have, there's about 3 different companies that most of the schools down here deal with. And so I'm just knocking on doors. I know a lot of coaches here. and just getting people to know our product. And so I'm doing that now. So I've got my hand in it a bit. If I said I did not miss coaching, I'd be lying to you. You don't do something for 33 plus years and not have a desire to go back to it. But I'm just trying to put everything, the work ethic I had in strength conditioning into this current position that I have now. And I'm enjoying it. I've reunited with a lot of old players now. That's been I was down in Houston recently, and we recruited, when I was in Minnesota, we recruited Texas quite a bit. And I had about 15 guys from Minnesota, University of Minnesota, that live in the Houston area. Spencer Johnson also lives in Houston. And Spencer came by with his son. We met at a sports bar there in Houston. So I've had a lot of time to see players that I hadn't seen other than on Facebook in a long time too, because of the different places I've gone here in the States. So that's been a lot of fun. So that's what I'm currently doing. And, you never know what the future brings. I say I'm 61. I certainly don't feel like I'm 61. I trained myself twice today in my garage. I mean, I've always been a firm believer in that you've got to, even though I didn't put myself through a lot of things that my players, especially later on in my careers, that I made my players do, I still do those type of things. I think that's very important in this occupation. So that's what I'm doing now. And just living in Waco, Texas, in the middle of Texas. And anybody gets down here, they know how to reach me, or they better still have my number in their phone.
Well, Coach, listen, we really appreciate you joining us today to help us educate our listeners on strength and conditioning at Auburn. You had a very impactful time there. You impacted a lot of people's lives positively. We've heard from them, and it was a blessing and an honor to have a little bit of your time today to be able to do this interview. So thank you.
And this is a lot of fun, just, watching those interviews that you sent me of those guys, just a lot of real special players and coaches. I failed to mention a lot of the football coaches that were there, the trainers, sports information people, and then especially my staff. I was so blessed with everybody that put up with my work hours and things like that at Auburn. I'll always be very appreciative of it.
Well, as always, we are The War Rapport. Please click like and subscribe on YouTube. We are The War Rapport on Twitter and Instagram. TW Rapport on TikTok. Gentlemen, we're signing off, and as always, War Eagle.
War Eagle, great to talk to you guys.
This episode of Building Rapport is brought to you by GWT2 Energy Consulting Services. For more information about them, make sure you check them out at gwt2energy.com.